So yeah, let us know if you have a question. Just go right ahead and add it into the chat. In the meantime, some folks are saying, Nicole from Indianapolis says, I want to pour a bucket of ice water over you. Simon says, what an incredible story. Sarah says, I will be crying all day. Thank you. And Olivia from Chicago says, the truth has never tasted so sweet. You're getting so much praise here into the chat. And, Kate, she says, I feel like I took a Peloton class and went to church at the same time. Yeah.
Could I brand that? Could I make that a thing? That's great.
We need to do that. We should work with them, too.
Getting those miles in.
Yes. So Olivia says, phenomenal. Chris, you've given me so much to think about. As a fellow advocate and speaker, thank you for being you. Becca is saying, so inspiring. Thank you. All right. So we do have a question, and this one comes from Wayne. Wayne, did you want to ask your question?
I don't mind asking it. Thank you for that. That was like the most inspiring thing I've ever heard, and it's so crazy to just hear about people's turmoil, especially when you can't relate to it personally. Like you're amazing. You're an angel. My question is, in your opinion, do you think that they will ever give transgender folks their own category in sports, or will they ever stop comparing genders in sports? Like, what is the most ideal approach that, that should be taken moving forward so people like you can feel included in no matter what direction you go?
Oh yeah, great question. So it's complicated, right? Because there are binary trans people. So I identify as a trans man. I'm a man. I want to compete with men in sports. That's where I belong. And there are non-binary folks too. Some may identify as trans, some might not. But they don't feel that they belong in either category, that the strict labels of men and women, they're more along a spectrum. So, for me, one, it's, we know separate is never equal. And we know that from history, separate is never equal. And so putting me in a third category is just further othering me as a trans person. Additionally, it would be, I think, literally impossible to create categories, to create separate leagues for trans people. Listen, we are such a small part of the population, and those of us who play sport, and then what sport we play, and then what level we play at, I literally would not be competing against anyone. Yeah, I don't want to see third categories. Now, for some running races, there are third categories that open up space for non-binary folks to self-select into that category, which is awesome. But no trans person should be forced to compete in a separate category. Trans women are women. They belong in women's sports. Trans men are men, compete with men. We need to stop thinking about trans people in sports as biological blank, because what we see is, say, for trans women, that a trans woman is on par with her cisgender peers in sports. And so we really have to stop invalidating the identities of trans people when we're talking about us in sports, and recognize that we know who we are and we know where we belong. No trans person is transitioning to get a competitive advantage or to try to achieve athletic glory. Great question.
So we have another question from Indy. Jay Coogan, did you want to go ahead and ask your question? Are you with us, Jay? Okay, I'll just ask it for you on your behalf. So Jay wants to know, how many miles did you ride today?
I think it was just 8 in that little segment, but I can't really tell exactly. It's about 8. Maybe 9. In 20 minutes?
That's impressive.
Yeah.
Right on. And we have another question also. Natalie from Chicago. Natalie Weiland, did you want to ask your question as well?
Hi, yeah. Thank you so much for that. It was super, super powerful. I'm feeling inspired. And I was just wondering, for those of us who are looking to take action, kind of like what's one thing that you could have used from your community when you were younger, something that people could have done?
Yeah, there's so many simple steps that you can do to start right now to make it better for LGBTQI plus people, for trans people specifically, non-binary people. Open up space for everyone to just be themselves. The big thing is language, starting with language. Watch the language that you're using. You know, so much, we do this with little kids all the time. We're like, oh, he's gonna be a real heartbreaker. He's gonna have all the girls, right? Like, we assign sexual orientations and gender identities to young people before they can tell us who they are and who they love. So open up that space. Do you have a partner? Are you seeing anyone? Recognize and use people's pronouns. For everybody who's on Zoom, a great thing to do is to go up to those little dots in the top corner of your screen, go to rename and put your pronouns in your name. So when I see things like that, it allows me to know that it's okay for me to tell people my pronouns, that someone who has that, I don't assume that they're trans, I assume that they're an ally, that they're gonna recognize and acknowledge people for who they say they are, use appropriate names, use appropriate pronouns, correct yourself if you make mistakes. And a very basic starting point if you're unsure about all of this is, again, you don't know what you don't know, but once you learn, you have to do better. So go to transathlete.com and I have terminology resources, a bunch of resources about trans people in sport. And like I said, this is a huge fight right now. And it's not just about sport. This is a gateway to further discrimination against the trans community. You know, we start with kids not being able to play with their friends in high school. And then we see, directly related, that kids can't get gender-affirming care, which will save their lives. And they can't change their markers so that their ID matches who they are, which means that we can't travel. We can't get employment. You know, life becomes incredibly difficult. And so legislators are trying to literally erase us out of public view through policy. So it's our responsibility to fight back. My big call to action would be to go to my webpage and go to Take Action. And if you are in one of these states, or you know someone in one of these states that have one of these bills, please speak up, please write to the legislators. Tell them that all young people should have the opportunity to play sports, to be themselves, and help us fight these bad bills.
Thanks so much, Chris. So we have one more question. Courtney also has a question for you. Courtney, would you like to come off on mute? Last one. Okay, I will ask it for you on her behalf. So Courtney wants to know, who were some of your role models and are some current inspirations?
Yeah, so my role models when I was a kid, which, you know, think of me now like as a young girl in suburban Chicago in the 90s, right? Like my role models, people I looked up to, because I didn't see any people who looked like me, who seemed like me at that time, were really people in sports who were creating change. And I didn't realize this until after. I mean, obviously, Michael Jordan, because I was a 90s kid in Bull Land, but I was really inspired by people like John Carlos and Tommy Smith, who were the two track and field Olympians in the 1968 Olympics who raised the gloved black fist. Jesse Owens, Muhammad Ali, Billie Jean King. Those were the athletes that I was looking to because they used sport as a vehicle for social change. And that's, I didn't know at that time, but definitely the part of the legacy that I would like to leave behind is using my sport and my platform to create greater change for my community and the world.
Great, thank you so much, Chris. Everybody, come on, let's go. Let's all get off of mute and let's, give
Thanks, Creative Morning
the
fam.
largest, loudest round of applause this morning that we have ever heard.